Right, I want to have a look at some physics, and I want to start where I left off, and we're going to start looking at energy dissipation. So we looked at last time kinetic energy to potential energy to kinetic energy. We looked at Hooke's law and springs, and now we're trying to look at how this energy that we may have can be lost. We end up with two sorts of energies to play around with. We end up with useful energy that we actually want and wasted energy that isn't. A simple example of this might be looking at a light bulb, for instance. If I've got myself a light bulb, I've got my battery, I'm going to supply electricity to my light bulb. What we're going to do is we're going to convert this chemical energy in the battery is going to be converted into electrical energy. And then this electrical energy is turned into light. But even with quite efficient LEDs, we also get some heat. I've converted all my lights in my house to LEDs, and I've noticed that instead of having a 60-watt light bulb, I can now get exactly the same amount of light out of a 4-watt light bulb. We have the same amount of light, but what we have in the 60-watt is a lot more heat, and this is simply wasted energy. You can argue that in the winter this is actually heating up your house, but basically if I want light, then I want to get as much efficiency as we can converting one into the other. So we've got two terms that we want to think about. Useful energy and wasted energy. We think of this as putting in some energy into the system. And this energy into the system, we either think of as being useful or maybe wasted. This is a Sankey diagram which tries to show this quite nicely, and this is for an incandescent light bulb, the old type of light bulbs, which used to glow white hot and waste an awful lot of heat, only to give out a small amount of light. This is not efficient. If I compare that with my LED bulb, then my LED bulb, I put so much energy in and I get out my light energy, and I've got much less wasted as heat. So there's my light, my useful energy, and I've got my heat, which is largely wasted energy. Most of this energy we often see is caused by friction. And if we look at the old system of a bicycle wheel. Here's my bicycle wheel. We've got two brake blocks that are applied. And if we push this together, then it's going to press on the wheel. We're going to generate a lot of heat, but it's going to take the energy out of the wheel rotating, and it's going to stop the wheel. There we are. That's looking quite a good thing to actually do. Other forms of friction we look at are perhaps a drill. We've got the chuck of a drill. We've got our drill bit. This is going to rotate, and unless this, when it rotates, is going to sort of grip into the brick, the wood, or whatever, then it's not going to cut anything if it's not gripping onto the wood, ripping it to bits. What we want is when this is going to have high friction, and then something works. With low friction, well, it's not so useful. Let's have a look at a couple of experiments that might sort of demonstrate this. And one of them is one that you ought to do at home. So let's see what we can do. The first of these experiments is a very easy one, and I'm just going to rub my hands together. And as I rub my hands together, they're getting hot. Now, let's wet my hands. If I now rub my hands together, and it doesn't matter how furiously I do it, they're not getting hot. And they're not getting hot because the friction is there. The friction was causing the heat, and when my hands are wet, then the water is allowing my hands to run over one another really easily. So when they're wet like this, they run over each other very, very easily. Whereas when my hands are dry, we're getting high, a much larger amount of friction. We're going to have a look at another simple example of this. And I've got a couple of books to try and move. I think you can just about see the books. Here we are. Right. I'm going to push these. And it requires an amount of effort to try and push those along. Let's now put the books lying down one after the other, and if I now push them, it requires a considerably larger amount of effort on my part to try and push these along. And I can measure this force quite accurately if I want to, but basically, it's one you can easily try at home. You can push them along relatively easily like that, but if you put your books out, then it's much harder. It's noticeably more difficult to push the books along like this. So there we are, a couple of really quick, easy experiments that you could actually try at home, trying to show all about energy and friction. Basically, wasted energy is spread out. It's dissipated. And we lose it. We start off with rather concentrated energy. I've got energy that's concentrated perhaps in a chemical, in a battery, for instance. This is converted into electrical energy. And this energy that's electrical can then be maybe used in something like a motor. And that's going to make kinetic energy. And this can be used to perhaps lift a mass. Energy is wasted everywhere. My battery may become hot. The wires become hot. The motor becomes hot. Each time here, I'm wasting energy. This is becoming only a small amount of energy, a large amount of chemical energy, giving me a small amount of heat energy. Electrical energy, the wires getting slightly hot, small amount of heat energy. I can't recover these amounts of energy. There's nothing I can do to try and get this energy back. So this energy is basically spread out, and to all intents and purposes, it's lost. Where is it lost to? Well, it's lost eventually to outer space, because the world becomes hotter and that energy as heat is radiated out, and that which is radiated into space is just basically lost and gone forever. We see this in all types of things. Our energy is spread out. The most common one we see is this vacuum flask. You have a nice little vacuum flask, and very good it is too at keeping in the heat, and it's going to keep your tea or something else hot for quite a while. But if you leave for 2-3 days and you go back, then it's at room temperature. All that heat that you had stored in there has been lost. And where's it gone? Well, it's gone to heat the air up. But you know, in your house that you put the radiators on, you're trying to get the house warm and keep it warm. And if you keep it warm, it doesn't stay warm for long. You lose heat. You're losing heat through the roof, through the walls, through the windows. And it doesn't matter if you insulate your house really well, you still lose heat. The difference is how fast you lose the heat. Not really appropriate for quite this time of year. It's a bit wrong time of the year, but if you get snow on the roofs or frost on the roofs, it's interesting to see which houses keep their frost the longest, keep their snow the longest. Those that do that have probably got the best insulation. I want to look more at energy and efficiency, and to do that, we're going to have a quick look at another simple experiment. And in fact, the size of this will give you some indication of how efficient it is. I've got two fans. I've got this large turbine and I've got a small fan. This fan is literally driven by this big one. If we turn the big one, the little one will then turn. When I stop, the little one stops. And if we look at how much I can turn this, you can see that if I turn it slowly, no energy is being sort of made. We've got to get enough to get this one going. But look how big this is, how much energy I have to put into here to get the little one to go. So we're losing energy. Where are we losing energy here? Well, we're losing energy everywhere. Friction. As heat. So this is as it's spinning, generating electricity, running down there, and driving a really small motor. The generator, much bigger motor in comparison with the little one that's being driven here. And energy is lost. So I can't get out the amount of energy that I put into the system. I put in a large amount of energy into the system, but we're losing energy. So let's have a look at some equations that do this. We look at efficiency simply as the useful energy over the total energy. And if I want this as a percentage, then I can multiply by 100 to turn it into a percentage. So let's suppose I put into the system something like 200 joules of energy. And the useful energy that comes out is going to be only 50 joules. So if we now call up my calculator to do the calculation, that's where I made a little mistake because I thought my calculator was up there. Nope, not there, not working. Okay, so we'll go to the old tried and trusted technique of using a calculator. Then we simply do the calculation, which is going to be, that wasn't helpful. That's more helpful. Simply my 50 divided by my 200, which is going to give me a quarter, times that by 100, and is going to give me 25%. So putting here is going to give me 25%. Yeah, I could have done that in my head, but I was trying to show you how to do it. So this device only 25% efficient. Can we get more efficient items? Yeah, about the most efficient item I know would be something like a transformer. And transformers, they also get hot. And they can come out around about 95, 98% efficient. But many things aren't. I'm often reminded about solar cells. I did some stuff with hydrogen fuel cells, and people ask me about how efficient are these things, and they say, well, they're not very efficient. My solar cell that I'm working on is probably only about 15% efficient. And people say, well, that's not very good. And if you're looking at trying to power an electric car, well, that's also not very efficient. One of the sums that we look at quite often is about an ordinary car. People tell me that they're good, they're quite efficient. Yeah. So a petrol or a diesel powered car is going to be about 35% efficient, something like that. So not very efficient. Solar cell, and going on to perhaps powering a fuel cell. Fuel cell is going to be, let's say, 40 or 50% efficient. And we have to remember that when we do these, this is only getting 15%, and then I've got 50% of that 15%, which is only now 7.5% efficient. So efficiency, big problem with physics when we're trying to look at how to do things. The most efficient you can get something is, in theory, 100%. If you get more than 100%, well, you know you've made a mistake. We can look at these efficiency limits, and we saw with those two fans, I had the large fan driving the small fan. Could I have actually done that differently? Yeah. Let's see if we can make it a fairer test. So what I've got is a large fan powering a small fan. You can see, yeah, that works really well. What would happen if instead of taking a large fan, that I could actually power this with a smaller large fan? So let's take that one out. This has got a much bigger motor, and so we should be able to spin this and drive the other one. No, nothing. This is just not kicking out enough energy to power even this tiny little motor. Spinning that as fast and as hard as I can, nothing happens. Whereas if we can take this bigger one, it can generate enough energy. What happens if I swap these? So I'm taking the very tiny motor out, and now I've got a reasonable size motor. Let's try spinning this. And as you can see, with all the effort of trying to spin that, it's not affecting this one, because this one still requires too much energy. And we are losing all our energy in this efficiency. Can I improve efficiency? Yeah, of course we can. How do I make a car more efficient? Well, one of those simple ways is I can oil the car, I can lubricate, and things work really well. Reminds me of the usual thing where someone decides to help someone on their bicycle. And so we have our friend on his bicycle. And what can we do to help this person? Well, it's quite possible that to try and help them, you could put some oil on their brakes. This will make the brakes, when they lock onto the wheel, not create as much friction. And now the bike won't stop. It does rather ruin the idea of brakes, but is a practical joke that I've seen many students play on one another. So what can we use to try and make things easier? So with cars and other machinery, we can use oil to reduce the friction. With wires that get hot that we mentioned, well, we can use shorter and thicker wires. That will cut down the resistance. We've got wind resistance, and we can get rid of this by making things more aerodynamic. That's certainly going to help. And if we've got a lot of sound made by a machine, then perhaps we can tighten things to make sure that energy is not being lost. Generally, when sound's made on something, something's vibrating, pushing against something, and you don't want that. There's also a problem, though, with these new electric cars, that they can just happen to sneak up on you because you can't hear them coming. We're talking about electrical efficiency, and that brings us into electrical appliances. We can think of a whole load of everyday electrical appliances. Let's think of some of these. We can start with a light bulb. Now, what's our useful energy from this? Well, obviously that's the light. What's the wasted energy on this? Well, the wasted energy is simply going to be the heat from the bulb. Okay? We can also have an electric heater, I suppose. You'll think, well, that's good. The useful energy is going to be heat. And what isn't going to be? Well, this wire glowed red hot, so it's actually giving out light. We may not be able to see it, but that doesn't matter if we can see it or not. It's still giving out that light, which isn't what we want. All right. Let's have my toaster. Yeah, that's good, because that's useful energy is going to heat that. Yep, very good. But what happens if you put your hand above the toaster? So you put your hand above the toaster, you think, no, I can't leave that there long, that's getting too hot. You're heating the toast, but we're also heating the air. And probably the wires are glowing red hot, so we're wasting energy there. Let's think of some more. How about a kettle? Yeah, useful energy, that's heat. But again, we're heating the air. Hairdryer. That sounds like a good one. Well, it's also doing heat, but it's also producing kinetic energy. And any of that kinetic energy that's wasted will be turned to heat. So that's doing quite well. But you can hear it. And how much of that energy is used to dry your hair, and how much is also just lost to the air around you. So we can see that with these electrical items, they're not doing terribly well. We can look at all sorts of different ways of doing things, ways of perhaps having electrical items. How many of you have got at home one of these Windup torches? I certainly use one of these. I have one in my car. I don't use it very often, and when I need it in my car, all I have to do is wind it up and my torch is good to go. If I put a torch in my car with batteries, by the time I need it, normally the batteries are flat. Wind-up torch, well, how's that working? Well, we've got chemical energy in U, and that is producing some kinetic energy, and that goes on to be stored normally somehow in the torch as elastic potential energy. This elastic potential energy can then be used to turn into electrical energy, and that electrical energy into light. And at each of these stages, we're going to waste energy. So how do you choose the most efficient device? Well, one of the things that you can look at on these different devices is its rating. And we often get things like A star star, A star, A, then B, C, D, and so on, gradually getting worse. So when you're buying new items, you can look for here the best energy rating that you can. Typically, that will cost more. Recently, I bought a fridge, and I looked carefully at the fridge, and I want to see about this fridge. So I had a choice of two models. I've got fridge A and I've got fridge B. Fridge A was an A star star fridge, and B was just an A. So A is more efficient. But this one costs more. And this one costs less. And then we looked at the running costs. And this one did cost less. And this one did cost more. But then I did some sums, and I worked out, well, how much is it going to cost me to buy this and to run it? Now, it costs more and the running costs will lower each year. This one cost me less, but more running costs a year. And if my running costs a year weren't that much higher than those, then in fact, I could actually save money by buying a less efficient fridge than the more efficient fridge. We have to look at where we get this number called ROI, return on investment. How much money do I have to put in to get out? When I looked at buying my fridge, I had to work out that I had to keep my fridge for 10 years or more before A became more efficient than B. I looked at how long the fridges were guaranteed for, and it was less than 10 years. If I'm lucky and my fridge lasts more than 10 years, it will cost me less to have this fridge than to have bought the more cheaper but less efficient fridge. So we've looked at some idea about efficiency here. Next time I want to have a go at looking at energy and power and look at then going on to looking at heat. So I didn't quite finish this topic today, but I'll look at energy and power next time just to finish off. And then we'll go on and look at more about heat and what we can do there. I'll see you later in the week. Take care. Bye-bye.